evening, everybody. Welcome to another developer interview here for the Perceptive Podcast series on game wisdom. My guests tonight have joined the indie space, and they're currently working on their first game as an indie studio with Sparrow Warfare. And they're on to discuss that, as well as their own form of antagonistic design. This should be a very interesting conversation. So please welcome to the podcast, Charlene and Martin. How are the two of you doing?
Very good. Thanks for having us on the podcast.
Yes.
Not a problem. We are once again dealing with some lovely time zone challenges. So where are the two of you based out of?
We're actually here in Copenhagen in Denmark, so it's morning here.
And it is in the wee hours of the morning here for me, but it seems I've been doing more and more late night recordings lately, so I've been getting used to it. It's always that challenge. I have international conversations, but this should be a great one. And for those of you watching, as I always say, if you are interested in coming on to discuss game dev or a game you're working on, be sure to get in touch. So, the first question for both of you then is, wouldn't you mind introducing yourselves, and what is your background when it comes to game dev?
I start? Okay, so I'm Martin. My last name is actually pronounced Pichelmeier, but no one gets that right ever. Because I come from Austria, which is a very small country in the middle of Europe. And I've been an indie game developer for 2008. I published my first game for iOS back then, but it was the year that the App Store launched, so we were really very early on with that. And then I worked for many, many years as one of the co-founders of Broken Rules, which is a Vienna-based indie studio that make games like And Yet It Moves and Old Man's Journey. I was involved in some of those games, but not those two that they're best known for. And after around 10 years of working with as an indie developer, I needed a change. So I moved to Copenhagen in Denmark and took on a teaching job and ran the games program here at the IT University for a couple of years. And then after that, just at some point, I wanted to make games again. So I kind of quit my academic job and just jumped headfirst back into indie game development, and came back to a very different world to what it was in when I made my last commercial game. So that has been an interesting experience. But before that, maybe I have a PhD in computer science, so I'm more coming from the technical side of things. But nowadays I'm doing like half of the non-technical stuff here too.
Mm-hmm. You were also a media artist. You did a lot of art.
I also did a lot of art pieces while I was doing my PhD, like actual museum-shown art pieces. But that too was a career where I at some point decided, no, I'm quitting.
And I'm Shar. I'm from Dublin in Ireland, another small European country. And I have had, kind of like Martin, a very varied career. I started out as a biblical scholar. I have a master's in Hebrew, Aramaic, Syriac, and Greek. So I spent a lot of time sitting alone in libraries. And after that, I wanted to do something that was kind of like the opposite of that when I had my master's. So I ended up then working at Google for a few years, and then I worked at Facebook for a few years, and then I had enough of spreadsheets and I wanted to do something creative. So I had kind of saved up, we got stock, of course, when I worked in Facebook, and I said, okay, if I sell the stock that I have, then I can live for 1 year and write my fantasy book, because I just wanted to write a fantasy book. So I mean, of course, that was a really, really stupid idea. I mean, if you imagine if I had just held on to that stock, we would have no problem funding this game. But anyway, that's not what happened. So I wrote my fantasy book, and then at the end of that time, I still needed, to make money and pay rent and all that. But I didn't want to go back to the kind of big tech world. So I started making these small Twine games. Do you know Twine? Yeah, they're like so a lot of like small interactive fiction. And then I started doing some writing for smaller studios in Ireland. And then I saw a tweet one day from Sven Vinske, the leader of Larian Studios, saying he wanted a writer who could write nonlinear narrative beats. And I was like, well, I think that's me. I'm going to go for this. And so I sent him a tweet and said, yeah, that's me. Where do I send my portfolio? And from that, I ended up getting to write all of the barks for Divinity Original Sin Enhanced Edition. So like all of the spells, there'd be like 10 different ways of like 10 different things you could say after you cast a particular ice spell. And so I wrote all of them one after another in a spreadsheet. So I came back to my real home of spreadsheets. And then from that, I got to work as one of the writers for Divinity Original Sin 2. Right from the beginning, and then also for Baldur's Gate 3, I was writing core story from the start of that. And then I met this guy when I came to give a talk about writing for games in Copenhagen in 2018.
And decided to go to another small European country.
I decided to move to another small European country. So I came here, and since I've been here, I've been like mostly doing freelance work, also working as story lead at Digita Fabrique, which is a small studio. They made Mutazione and Solzi Chronicles. And now here we are doing our own thing.
Nice.
That was a very long introduction, but we're very old, so it takes time.
That is all right.
It was longer while we went through it.
All right. Before we talk a little bit more about kind of like your backgrounds, for the people listening to us, what is kind of the elevator pitch for Sparrow Warfare?
So you are, let's see. It always depends whether you want to go from the kind of story side or the mechanic side. But let's just say that what we care about.
You go for the story side. I do the mechanic pitch.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so you're a tiny sparrow, and all of the other birds have been trapped and enslaved in mahjong tiles by the evil storyteller. The storyteller is like our bad guy for once, because we live in a world now, I think, where storytellers are not really the good guys anymore, but are ruining all of our lives. So the storyteller is the bad guy, and he's trapped all of the birds. And your job as the little sparrow is to journey through the lands and free them one by one.
Yes.
How do you free them, Mar?
Well, now we come to the mechanics-based pitch, and that is that we play a lot of deck builders, and all deck builders I know, actually, I haven't seen a single different one, are very, very slow in building up, and are very, maybe Ascension is an exception, but most of them are very, very slow in their pacing. And then when they go really wild, you go from doing 4 damage to doing 8 damage. Now imagine, by playing, and at the same time we are informed by Mahjong as the core gameplay, which is the same game as Rummy, by the way, but it sounds much more fancy if you say Mahjong, as in Mahjong the card game, not the solitaire game. And that means you play triples of cards instead of individual cards. By having triples, you already can do interesting, small, tiny math that lets the system explode faster. By creating an insane amount of synergies between cards you play either at the same time, because triples, like 1 to 3, 2 to 2, and so on, you can accelerate the progress to something that feels like a properly a powerful bird quite successfully. So imagine it's a deck builder for people with not that much time at hand, maybe with not that much patience at hand, or who just enjoy the more juicy side of playing and not so much the little tick detail. Tiny whimsical damage side.
So in the game at the moment, like we have a demo out right now that anyone can come along and play, and it has a good chunk of the progression mode that you can play with either the Firebird or the Songbird, because there's of course different ways of playing as well. But what is really, I think, what our players really like most is the daily flight. So there's takes somewhere between, let's say, 15 and 40 minutes in the day, and it's like 3 levels, and everyone has the same modifiers, everyone starts the same, and then there's a leaderboard to see how you end up, and people really seem to enjoy that aspect too.
Yeah.
All right. And definitely have a lot to discuss with Sparrow Defense as well as in the coming minutes. So one question I wanted to ask Maureen, going back to what you said a few minutes ago about starting in indie dev, going to do teaching, and then going back to indie dev. For a lot of the people watching this right now, I know there's a lot of people who are more like getting into game dev or indie dev like right now in like the past like 3 to 4 years. And I just wanted to ask you, Like, how has things changed as someone who started out, 10, 15, or 10 or so years ago in terms of indie dev to then coming back to it like today, like kind of for them listening to us? Oh,
20 years ago.
Yeah. I think I started working on first game that got released roughly 20 years ago, 19 years, I think. Oh boy. So it's interesting. So I think people have a very short memory. So I feel like I just missed out on some of the fat years, but the fat years also had COVID. So I missed out on some of the most stressful years. Not that it was like stress-free in education. Trust me, education was also one of those areas where COVID had a huge impact, of course. But so when I started out as Broken Rules, we were in the beginning extremely fortunate because we had an IGF Student Showcase nomination. So we went to GDC immediately. Then I made my first game with a different studio back then that we merged with Broken Rules and also had an IGF nomination, my first game, because I made it for iOS and there was IGF Mobile for 1 year, which was a special that it really exists only 1 year, a special showcase of this is the indie space of mobile. It was like an award ceremony integrated in the normal IGF ceremony at GDC, but it gave me the whole GDC as a nominee of a showcase experience. So my introduction to the international world of game development was very fast and good, and my experience was really good. GDC is a very different experience if you go there with that kind of background and you have a good answer for everyone who is asking you what you're doing. So that was very nice. By the way, another game nominated there was, I forgot the name, but it was by the guy who later founded a company that is called Discord. You might have heard of it. We are using it right now. The founder is actually a super nice guy who was there in the neighbor booth. So that was just, the access was different. When you were one of the fortunate few that got visibility very soon, you had people like Dan Edelman at Nintendo, for example, who would onboard indies, but only a handful every year. You would have Valve suddenly looking at the IGF games, and Steam was just opening up to non-AAA or non-big publishers. So as an indie, you suddenly could get your game on Steam. But we had the vendor ID, I think 63 or something like that with Broken Rules. It's a super low digit number because we were just, the timing was just when it started to open up. A lot of communication spaces for indie development were created and so on. And the network was just insane that you could get, if you were one of the privileged people that could go to GDC, that could attend international festivals, that could afford to go indie at that point, that had the education, the equipment, the level of English language and so on. But then it was very interesting to actually enter these spaces like Steam and Nintendo and so on. We made Nintendo games for the Wii and then for the Wii U. Failed device, but very good game. So that is not the case anymore. Nowadays, all of those big companies, the platform holders, have processes and official ways how you get in there, and then you don't even have a Steam rep anymore. We had like regular emails with our Steam rep that was a personal relationship. Then they moved company and so on. But it was very different. Now it's much more. It's like easier to get access, but you get less out of it, because if you were game, I don't know, 500 on Steam, you had a different level of visibility to game 500 in the first half of the day, basically. So that has really changed. The funding landscape is weirdly the same. It was very, very hard to get any kind of money in 2008. Like, it was impossible, actually, unless you were one of the nascent social, what is it called? Free-to-play game makers. We called it social something back then. I forgot. Unless you were like one of the nascent free-to-play game companies that just started out to become a thing, from moving from Facebook to mobile, no one else had an easy time, I think, getting money. It was the same game. If you had connection and so on, you could talk to a lot of publishers. But signing a deal was not really easy. It was possible for us because, again, we had this huge reputation from the get-go. But everyone who didn't have that kind of kickstart into game development had a much harder time back then. Just as hard as now, where deals are also still being made. And if you have connections, you can totally make deals. But the connections you have to have. So I think that is about the same. So I really feel like times are different, but they're not harder than they were 10 years ago. We had to write our own engine, for example. Like, technology got so much easier. We had to port it from platform to platform. It was like really a lot of work. Nowadays, you just click a button and go to a Unity, and then you have to fix everything. Yeah. So I think by opening up and making a lot of things much more accessible, the world got a little bit harder to navigate for people. But at the same time, I think it is a fairer world we live in somehow. So. And I'm really sad that I wasn't there when it was easier to get funding for ridiculous projects like 5 years ago or 4 years ago. But I also think a lot of those games, I'm happy that people had a good time making them, but I could have told them that this is not a good idea sometimes. So yeah, but they were fun to make, I guess. So yeah, sorry if again a long answer. This will take a long while, this podcast. Oh boy. But yeah, that has changed. I'm happy. Like one thing that has really changed is demographics. When I went to my first GDC, it was like Western men and some Japanese guys in suits. That was it. Maybe one Korean. That was the whole demographics. And nowadays it is much more international, it is much more gender diverse, it is much more interesting, the kinds of discussions you can have with people, because people come with many more worldviews. I like that about the world. I want more plurality. So that is a really very, very positive development. And I love to try out weird Chinese games. And what was that African indie game we played a few weeks ago? It's nice. It's interesting. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's a good change.
Yep.
Okay, now it's not for here. if I have more, I'll tell them.
Yeah, I think it's always been like great to see just like how much like the international scene has grown in terms of indie dev. I've been interviewing developers since like 2012 now, and it's been just fascinating to see like a lot of places, especially like countries that weren't really known for game dev in like the early 2010s. Like I always said, like Brazil was a really good example of this. Like for the people watching right now, I remember. In like 2011, 2012, there were like no real discussions out of Brazil as a country for game dev. And then, we had the Brazilian Games Festival. I've been just getting a lot more games from that country. And yeah, like what you were saying more, like it's fantastic to like see like so many more different games being released. I mean, I do like a debut dev showcase now every month. I try to play games from first time developers. And I mean, I get emails from developers like all around the world because they know that I'm the guy who's going to play every single game that gets sent to them. And it is just fascinating to see just how much more variety there is in game dev in like the last like 10 years now. I guess
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, it feels like there's more people now taking their inspirations from the world's outside games.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like like around the kind of like 10, 12 years ago, most games were like what is it, like cannibal, like eating other games and kind of like building upon games upon games upon games, but there's more more inspirations coming from outside games now.
And I guess the next question is going to be for you, Charlene. You said that you worked at Facebook and Google. Did you do anything in terms of like game dev while you were there, or were you like in like other like fields there?
Yeah, I had nothing to do with games there, like at all. Like not a single thing. I worked at I was like the kind of creative writing team lead at Google. So I'm working on like newsletters for AdWords and AdSense customers across all the languages of Europe. And then in Facebook, I did a lot of work on like right to left, like so like Hebrew and Arabic is like it used to be a really big problem on the internet. It's not so much anymore, but right to left languages, making sure that it's like the user operations side of things, being the voice of the user. I was like the Tron of Facebook.
All right. And I guess in that case, and when you got a chance, or when you were working at Larian and doing the writing, for Baldur's Gate and Divinity. Yes, in terms of like writing like barks, I guess this is something that I'm not too familiar with. Or I've interviewed like people who write full-length stories or who do like the narrative in that respect. What was it like coming up with like the different lines or different ways people could like say these spells and so on?
Okay, so yeah, that is, I mean, it's really a completely different job. So, because like I've worked on the story. This one of the things I love about writing for games is like you have this space where you work on the story for months, the kind of core story, the part where you break it down into little scenarios and design the scenarios, the part where you then actually write the lines, the part where you design the characters. But then Barks, it's like a whole other world, like a completely different skill set. And the only way I think that you can do it effectively is to do it in one go. In a kind of like marathon sprint of craziness where you have like the right kind of music. Like I listened to this kind of like I don't know what I was listening to then, but it would have been something similar, like these kind of like solfeggio frequency, like white noise, kind of just weird sounds that just like make your brain go into this pew kind of space. And then you just sit there with the spreadsheet and you start writing. And usually what I would do is, like, for example, if we have something like an ice spell, the first thing I would do is just go and like look at like idioms to do with ice, synonyms for ice, special words to do with ice. And I would just start writing them all down on my piece of paper and just like mixing them together in my head. And then just start writing the barks. I had 3 minutes to write each bark, budgeted. It was a 3,000 line spreadsheet. So yeah, you just have to kind of get into the zone and go for it. And I think some of them stand the test of time, and some of them, make me kind of like really like almost like kind of hurts the edge of my jaw when I think about them. Like
All right, and then going to like writing for Baldur's Gate 3. How was it that in terms of like what you focused on?
So I mean, that was we started writing the core story for BG3 when we were still coming to the end of making DOS 2. So there was like at the start of that there was a stretch of time where we would be like working Monday to Friday on DOS 2, and then the small kind of group of story people would then spend the weekend sitting in a room working on BG3. So the brain was like kind of all over the place. So I worked on BG3 for 2 years. So I didn't, none of the lines that I wrote will be in the final form of the game, since it went on for a few more years after I left. But the core story is still pretty much intact.
Mm. Yeah. And for people watching, I'm sure there are a lot of them probably going to have like tons and tons of Baldur's Gate related questions, because not too many people played that game over the last few years. One thing I want to ask, this could definitely be its own podcast in of itself, but I don't know if you had any, or while you were in there, did you work on anything in terms of like how like the branching narrative work, or like different characters, or that respective part?
Yeah, so I mean the way that we worked for DOS 2 and then also for the start of BG3, and of course it was very different then. Like the company was a lot smaller when I started there. I think there was 35 people in the company when I started, and now there's like, I don't know, over 300 or something. So it was quite different times, like building up over the years. But the way we would start is like starting with making a kind of a core story, like having a general thread of a theme, making a core story, thinking about the characters who might fit inside of that world, writing up those characters, and then putting those characters into individual scenarios that will like bring out their traits, put them under pressure, put them under stress, especially like together, character versus character, or with each other, and bringing those individual scenarios piece by piece to create the final form. And that's what's so lovely about writing for games. I mean, I don't think all studios work like that. I think some studios have like very set, narrative designer goes here, writer goes here, quest designer is here. But when I worked at Larian, at least, it was very like we did everything. We all did everything all the time, and it was just lovely to create those worlds together. It was really a fantastic place to work. I had the absolute best time. So yeah.
Nice. And in terms, like, again, like this, I won't go too much into this, because we'll be here for another like 2 to 3 hours just discussing writing in this respect. But the reason why I wanted to talk about this was But for people listening to us, I just did a podcast talking about adaptive music in games and kind of the challenge of composing music to fit different scenes and different parts during gameplay. So I just wanted to ask, like, what was it like writing or thinking about writing a story that can be kind of explored in different ways? Does the player go this way? Do they choose this? Do they do that in that kind of respect?
You mean in terms of how to structure such a thing, or?
Yeah, like kind of like how to build something like that from a narrative or from a writing point of view.
Mm-hmm. So I think there's there's probably a few different answers to the question. One is you need a lot of time. That's something that can't really be rushed in a way that I see like a lot of kind of games that I get to work on now, kind of like on the side as a contractor, as a freelancer. They don't have this like lovely kind of blue sky thinking space of time to like really develop a story and to go down all these different pathways and branches and create all of these different beautiful little synchronistic moments. Another one is liberal use of tags. So whenever you think about scenarios or characters or something, is making tags that are going to apply to those things. So like if we were to think about perhaps one particular character and a personality trait they have, or some kind of part of their story that's very useful or interesting, is tagging everything that's in that thread so that you can kind of keep bringing it back later and later and later and returning to it. So, I mean, really, realistically, like inside of like working on a story like that is very like working in Twine. It's very much like this kind of visual scripting, connecting nodes, boxes to boxes, and then this kind of a very heavy tag-based system that you can keep returning to over and over again. That's the practice. In the kind of creation part, it's just a lot of Google Docs and a lot of spreadsheets. Spreadsheets is really the fine part of all game development. And then maybe the last thing is that it takes a huge amount of iteration, and the only thing you can do for iterating is testing. So playing your work over and over and over again, and you going through all of the different paths, finding the different ways that it can be, and making sure that each one of them is just as fun as the others, and that none of them feel like, well, this is the dud path or this is the crap path. Like there has to be, a feeling like that you can do any of these things, and it's going to give you something. It's going to have a little gem in there somewhere. And the only way to do that is test a million times, keep playing it, keep feeling like, that line, yikes, and taking that out, fixing it, turning it around. Yeah, that's it.
All right. And yeah,
the first draft is always terrible.
And we keep talking about this. We'll be here easily for another hour or two on top of talking about your current game. So in the future, if you're free, I would love to have more of a chat about kind of like the narrative side of things. So I think that's always another fascinating aspect of this. With that, let's talk a little bit more about kind of Sparrow Warfare. So I guess like the first question I want to ask both of you is, what kind of inspired you or led you to working on a deck builder as kind of like your first game as part of your new company now?
I think several inspirations. So in general, a deck builder is, we love card games. We play a lot of card games. We play a lot of old card games, like obscure 16th century French card games, 19th century Austrian card games, and so on. We play Mahjong, actually. So again, the version against each other, the gambling version. We just don't play for money. So one day, our friend who's teaching us, she really would be into that, I think. But So we love card games, and we always thought that deck builders are amazing to play. We've played a lot of them. We were addicted to Slay the Spire. You played a lot of Netrunner before that, and
Yes,
we play
I was
Ascension
a
together,
Netrunner super
and
fan.
we loved Inscription. Like a lot of games out there that we really enjoyed, or Magic also. But most of them are, again, doing the thing where they are games based on games. Not all of them, but some of them. And we thought, like, no, there's a world of card game out there, a whole history. And no one's looking at that. So we tried to break open a little bit the deck builder thinking, the design thinking in deck builders, by bringing a little bit more traditional card game design in there. Now you can't feel that anymore because it's so mushed into the video game. But it is one of the inspirations. Another inspiration is, of course, we're a new studio, we're self-funded, we needed something small. A deck builder is not super small, but is small enough that we know we can accomplish it as two people with our...
Not as small as we thought it was going to be, also.
It's actually exactly the size we thought it is. We just did a little bit too many jobs on the side, I think, to progress as fast as we thought. But again, we are in the development plan.
Yeah,
just saying. So smallness, good ideas in the sense of we had a repository of things, of design ideas to work through. We tested it in a prototype on paper. It's right over there. There's a stack of cards that are the original Sparrow Warfare. There are even some enemies still in the game that are from that session where we just sat in the kitchen on a Sunday afternoon, drawing with pencil on little paper cards. So early verification was possible, and that helped us with. And finally, Sparrow Warfare, specifically the game about birds, is because during the pandemic, you all remember how locked up we were. Even if we weren't locked up in the house, we were locked up in our area. We couldn't travel far, we couldn't get far away because everything was scary and sometimes forbidden. So Shara and I walked like 200 meters in that direction. Is a little lake, part of the ancient defenses of this city, actually. The Swedes are not going to invade anytime soon, so nowadays it's more a bird reservation than anything, right? And we walked there. It was a one-way street during the pandemic. Like, there were big signs, you're only allowed to walk in one direction. And there were thousands of birds, and we were looking at them and saying like, oh man, they can just fly away. We were so jealous of birds, but we also felt very connected to them because we knew they were also coming from somewhere else. It was like they were the world.
Our little buddies.
Little buddies. So that's why birds.
Yeah.
Pandemic trauma. we all have to deal with that in different ways, in our own ways.
And how long? So how long have you been working on the game for?
I think we started in like November a year ago, right?
Yes, November 2024.
Yeah.
So that's what, like a year and a year and a bit?
So the original idea was that we would be done in a year, but we still both had a lot of other gigs at times, and also we moved from. I used to write my own engine. I made 3 game engines in my life. It's crazy. And then I worked with Unity for a couple of years. And now I decided, no, I want to work with the Godot engine because I want something open source and more lightweight than Unity, because Unity became such a behemoth and so slow. So we had to completely start from the code base from scratch, basically. I couldn't use anything I had from before. So yeah, that's why it's a 2-year project, not a 1-year project.
Yeah.
And with
it's interesting actually when you say that, Mark, because I'm just thinking it's like when you're saying about doing the other jobs, it's like, we have this because we're just kind of working from our own savings and we're like, trying to get it going. We don't have a publisher, we don't have the funding or anything like that. But of course, then anytime a job would come along, like some writing work or some teaching work, or sometimes us going to give a talk somewhere, we'd be like jumping at the chance to take this, to keep us going. But I wonder if we had actually said no to all those jobs, if we would have been finished inside the year.
Yeah.
instead of just stretching it to 2 years in that way. Yeah. I don't know. I wonder. Let's think about that for the next game.
Okay.
And with coming up with kind of like the design for Sparrow Warfare, like for people listening to us, we have certainly played and covered a lot of deck builders on this channel, and even in my just spare time. Someday I may just have to write one of my books I wrote on roguelike design. I touched on deck building, but someday there just may be a book just specifically on deck builders, or just how many we've seen and such. So from a design standpoint, you mentioned, of course, like kind of like the Mahjong style, having to like play like multiple cards or multiple tiles. With coming up with that, I guess like, how was that in terms of figuring out like where you want like the basis for Sparrow Warfare to come from?
So it was really that one design meeting. So we both, I think, while walking home from Mahjong, had the idea of using Mahjong as a base, right?
Yeah.
And it was I don't know who of us it was. One of us had the idea of wild tiles, and wild tiles that's the secret sauce. So in Mahjong uses a deck of cards that is not very dissimilar from normal cards. It's tiles, like they use little stones. That's why we also use tiles. But one of the first versions was actually on cards. So it is a card game. It just uses very deep cards. And they just have numbers on them. Most of them. There are some exceptions, but most of them just have numbers on them. And you just put down 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, a streak of 3, or 2, 2, 2 of the same suit. All of them have always to be in the same suit. And we thought, like, but what if you could replace one of the numbers? Let's say 2, 3, 4. You replace the 4 with a wild tile, with a tile that does something more than just being a number. And that, and then of course, if you play that tile as a 3, it can work with the number 3. If you play it as a 4, it can work with number 4. Let's say it's an attack card. So you would have 2, 3, 4, and if you play the attack, like 2, 3 are of the suit, and 4 is a wild tile, you attack with 4. If you put it as the 2, you attack only with 2. So suddenly there's an interesting, easy to comprehend, and very general game mechanic.
So you can kind of imagine the wild tiles are basically like they have an X in the corner instead of a number, and then a little bit of text to say what they will do as well.
Yeah, and they will do things like freeze enemies, or
set up bombs,
or do all kinds, draw new tiles, discard tiles, heal, do really a lot of things that also can be combined to build interesting chains, because of course in the case of 2, 3, 4, it's like, okay, you have to have a 2 and a 4 to tell that it's a 2, 3, 4 you're playing. But if you play 2 and 2 wild tiles, it becomes just 2, 2, 2 as a rule, basically, because I can't know if you're in your head it's 2, 3, 4 or 2, 2, 2. So I decided to go for the simpler case. And then you can play the 2 with 2 wild tiles, and suddenly you have a chain of things happening. It's just 2 things, but you have a chain of things happening. And then, of course, you can play multiple things in one go. We have no energy in our system because you just play until you're out of cards.
So you have 13 tiles in your hand, and you play until you can't play anymore, and then you choose to end the turn.
Yeah, and usually they're just not like you can't do that with you can't do an energy-free deck builder that plays like, let's say, Slay the Spire, because then you could just always play all the cards. There would be no decisions. But there are so many decisions for a player to take if you have to play 3 cards. It's a puzzle in itself to find the combination, to find the optimal combination of how to combine the tiles you have at hand is the actual puzzle.
And we also haven't mentioned the followers, Mar. Actually, where you get the wild tiles from.
Yeah, but so, that actually came later. Okay. So all of those things, just because he was asking about the process, all of those things were really one afternoon after a couple of walks where we were talking about making our own deck builder. One afternoon of sitting down with paper and just making the game and then playing the game a couple of rounds. We played at least 3-4 rounds, and we were constantly doodling on paper, changing things. Now, there have been significant changes since then. For example,
the way that you get the wild tiles. So, at the moment when you're basically fighting, or you're basically fighting to free the birds from the Mahjong tiles. So they're ensnared by the storyteller, sent out to attack you. And when you break through that tile, you free the bird. So when you encounter a bird, they're in a tile. When you break through that tile, the bird comes and flies behind you and is now a follower. And at any moment when you need a little bit of help, you can phone a friend, click on that bird, and they will offer you a reward. Most of the time that reward is a wild tile. And so you can get into spaces where you've really used up a lot of your hand, but actually you're able to click on a bird to get the tile that's going to absolutely save you in this moment. Sometimes you're going to click on the bird and it's going to be like, well, I did not need that. And all of this stuff is also, interesting to play with, because our our daily flight players, you get, of course, special bonuses for not using up your followers. So our daily flight players try not to click on their followers as much as possible. Only in the most dire circumstance will they click on a follower.
Yeah.
Whereas the casual players, of course, are like, yeah, follower here, follower there, give me more wild tiles, build it up.
Yeah, but also in progression mode, I play like that.
In progression
too.
mode, yeah.
So it's like follower management, like when do I click, who do I click, and so on. It's just another component of how you play the game. Just like in other deck builders, the map is a part of the game that is a strategic decision-making point. Followers are very much the same, but they're always available, so there is less interruption. And one of the things that we also said, that we also agreed on very early, is that we want to make a slightly more streamlined and smooth deck builder that is not this hopping into a fight and then out of it and then in and then out and having the classic map with like sometimes it goes up to 3 lanes. It's just we didn't want to completely rethink what a deck builder can be. I just wanted to show, hey, that there are actually, like, you can just also innovate in that space quite a lot without people getting too confused and without it not being recognizable anymore. But it turned out to be more like a boss rush card battler in the end than an actual deck builder. So we ended up between a lot of genres, I think.
Yeah.
That's when you make your own thing. That's what happens.
And one thing that's very interesting as you're describing is not having like an energy system for Sparrow Warfare. Because energy is oftentimes a part of the balancing element for a lot of these games. When, more power for the card, more energy to justify its use. So from kind of like a balancing standpoint, it's like, how do you, I guess, like think about like, is a tile or is an action like too good, too bad, or need to be balanced or rebalance?
So one of the ways that we have that is that your tiles, the wild tiles that you get into your hand, some of them, they will go into your discard pile and then get redrawn, and it can keep going in a loop. But some of them are what we would call phoenix tiles. So when you use them in this level, they're gone and they come back in the next level. So you only get to use them once in the level.
And some of them
are even so powerful they're only one shot. You just use them once and they're gone forever. So we've kind of balanced it like that. We also have a kind of a difference between like a common wild tile versus rare wild tiles. And wild tiles that only get given to you by elites, elite birds, or by bosses. So like the best tiles, you only get from the bosses, from when you've beaten a boss, and then in the next level the boss is flying behind you. So like in the first level the boss is the beekeeper, so then at the start of the next level you'll see the little bee there with a crown over him flying behind you, and if you click on him he's going to give you a really good wild tile. But if you're a daily flight player, you want the no kings reward, so you're not going to click on that.
And the other thing is we have a lot of there are a lot of just mechanics that we use to or rules that we use to restrict the freedom of the player a little bit, and to make it so that they have to actually make decisions about what tiles they play, that kind of replace a little bit having this limit of an energy or just energy management as a game mechanic. So for example, some tiles create what we call slot hogs, so stones, tiles that only sit in your deck but do nothing for you, sit in your hand and they block one of the slots that you would have. So suddenly your hand size gets smaller as a side effect of playing very powerful tiles. Of course there are tiles that get rid of those and so on. It's not like a curse that stays forever, but there are, like, this balance is a little bit how many of the super powerful tiles you want to play and can play. There are also temporary tiles that block some of the slots. There are tiles that come as a side effect into your hand that are causing damage, that are doing all kinds of other nasty things that limit it a little bit. There are even tiles that and some good. No, but I meant just as a balancing thing to not make you able to go endless in every situation. There are also tiles that just end your turn. There's only one in the moment, but there can be more. So there's a lot of these like negative side effects that balance a little bit the power of the cards to make it more interesting to play. Yeah,
and I think just like with the kind of narrative systems and making stories that can go in all these different directions, the real only way you can do it properly, like with the balancing, is
iteration,
testing, iterating. Like I would say, if I had like a few like tips for people for making games, our tips would be like, go for a lot of walks. Have a lot of paper on the floor of your living room that you can be doodling on all the time.
And run a real nice Discord with really nice people. Because our playtesters, we have some that have been playing every day for months now. Because they're just, and they're co-designers by now. It's just a handful of people, but they give us so much feedback. They are indispensable.
Yeah.
Like they're really a part of this whole process. And I think they're having a good time with that too.
I think so, yeah. So they also help us with the balancing and the iteration. But it is like, I think that's where you can see like, Slay the Spire 2 is now out in early access, and you can see like what they're going to be doing in the early access. This is just the only thing they're doing now is balancing. Everything else is ready. The art is ready, the whole system is ready, the UI is ready. They're just balancing, and they're using the players to balance it with them.
Which is the idea for early access.
Which is the whole idea. Yeah, but like that is the idea. Is the balance. So you've balanced as much as you can yourself, then you need to get some other people in to see it. You can also see it in a game that we're really obsessed with right now. Our current favorite game is called...
Okay, this is the Oaken Tower moment.
Yes. It's called Oaken Tower. There's a demo out right now. It's going to go in early access at the end of the month. It's just a demo, and we have spent like well over 100 hours in this game. It's an auto battler by a solo dev from here in Denmark called Bokery, but the game is called Oaken Tower. And you can see in his Discord, and also even in the game, like the meta is like so interesting around the balancing. Have you played this game by any chance?
No, I've
Oaken
not.
Tower?
I've been looking. As you mentioned, I just looked up the store page for it.
It is so good. If you try it after our call, you will not go asleep tonight. But he has a Discord as well, and all of the kind of top players that you'll see, like when you end up playing. I mean, you have to get to like grandmaster level to be playing them, but like they're all in the Discord every day, like showing their builds, showing the different things they're doing, and showing how they're kind of exploiting little aspects of the system. And he keeps on tweaking based on this, and it's just beautiful to watch happen in real time.
Mm-hmm. And that's the joy of having like people play test your game and get their feedback on it. And especially for any kind of like very like number crunchy or mechanic heavy title, just being able to get so many eyes and figure out, okay, they just broke my game, or they just figured out this crazy combination I never even thought of. And I've spoken to a lot of developers, especially those who work on like roguelikes and any kind of procedural design, and like they just said that there's no way they were going to be able to bounce or figure everything out. They didn't have people poring over every nook and cranny of every one of their mechanics.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, especially like deck builders, technically deck builders have all these little chains. So you do a thing like you play a card, the card, I don't know, freezes an enemy. The enemy gets a buff that says it is frozen. Then you have a buff on yourself or some kind of trophy or whatever. There is like whenever an enemy gets frozen, draw a card. So you draw a card. That card has this and that happened when the card is drawn. So suddenly you have this long chain of things. It's just completely impossible to test all of them on your own. Maybe if you have some kind of automated system, you could. But it's much nicer to have people than robots, I think.
Mm-hmm. And like whenever I do like a design video about like roguelike design mechanics, I always try to come up with some like crazy example in my head of how you can like take an ability and just run with it in just such a unique way. And I guess as another design question for both of you, another aspect that we see from a lot of like deck building and card-based design are, of course, having specific builds. And again, like both of you, of course, mentioned Slay the Spire. And Slay the Spire's whole MO is each character has your own deck style, which has their own cards. With Sparrow Warfare, I guess with the idea of like having like different wild cards being things that kind of like influence or change your strategy, do you have like a like standard like deck styles, or is it kept like kind of like very generic in that respect?
No, we have
we have 4 different ways, and so you can progress through those ways, and then one of them is chosen each day for the daily flight. So there's the way of fire, where there's a lot of burning going on. There's the way of song, where you're kind of charming enemies to sleep, and then doing things based on how much song is built up on them. And there's the way of water, where you're kind of pooling water together into getting these, like, you kind of slowly amassing these gigantic numbers, and just trying to defend yourself while you build it up. And then the way of ghosts, where, well, actually, we haven't finished the way of ghosts yet. So
no, we say we don't talk about it.
We don't
admit that we haven't finished.
Ghosts is a mysterious secret.
I guess.
But then inside of those, there's also, different ways of playing. So, like, you can play the way of fire and go like full on fire, or you can be like full on strength. You can do it in different ways.
Yeah.
The wild tiles you get can sometimes influence the way your build is going to work out.
And with kind of like the different ways of playing, how is that like from a design standpoint? Because again, for everyone watching, I'm sure for both of you, you can come with a lot of different ways to create rules for different cards and specific systems.
So I like to build these clusters. So we're getting very close to our antagonistic design. But in the antagonism, I'm the one who makes the tiles. So Shah has had a lot of ideas and a lot of input on a lot of the tiles. But the majority, I think, is stuff.
Yeah, you're the Sparrow.
I'm the Sparrow, yeah. And what I like to make is these clusters of synergies that are trying to kind of make the same thing achievable in different ways, using a different lever, basically. For example, I recently added a set of like 6 or 7 cards that all had to do with freezing your opponents. So the bird comes out, there are a handful of ways to freeze them. Freezing means they don't attack that turn. They wake up again next turn, unless they have 2 freeze on them, then of course it's 2 turns later, and so on. And I created like, 7 or 8 cards that had something to do with freezing. They have a little bit of related symbols also, so people can understand that they work together. There's a daily run modifier that gives you 5 random ones of them, so you can explore that corner of the game. And what you can achieve by using these freeze cards is you can defend yourself, so you can be safer than if you hadn't played with those cards. You can attack with them, and you can interact with the boss. So our boss is always out. From the moment you enter the level, the boss is out. It's just sleeping. But there are ways to wake it up earlier, but otherwise it wakes up after a couple of turns always. So getting a little bit of damage on the boss is sometimes a very good way of surviving or even perfecting a level. So what I try to do is make these clusters where you have a lot of abilities. If you lean into that interaction, that pool of synergies between things. For example, with freezing, I made one about discard, because discard is a very, like, if you played say Sparrow, you know that discard is, especially when you play a silent, a very viable way of making very long runs, long hands, long turns. I don't know. You're playing for a long time because you can like recover energy. You can have more card draw and so on. So you just keep going very long thanks to discard, and you can prevent a lot of negative stuff by discarding nasty cards, or just have a lot more choice in what you can do, because very often discarding also means that you draw. So I also made one around discard, but since we don't have energy, it's of course the balance between drawing cards and discarding cards has to be very carefully maintained. But you can make, like, we have cards that have side effects when you discard that, for example, heal you a little bit if you discard that card. It's a tile in our case, but I'm just calling them cards to make it more accessible for people. So discard is another of those clusters. Then, of course, the actual, like, the way of fire, since fire is a different mechanic to a normal attack or to what Song does, there's a whole cluster around working with fire on the enemy to do damage in a different way, transforming, like moving fire from one enemy to the other, and so on. So yeah, I like to make these clusters of thematically and mechanically connected synergies to structure the deck in interesting ways and offer these
and
specializations.
whenever you see me getting complacent and playing the same kind of run over and over again, then you go, well, no, I need to put a wrench in this gear somehow. Mess it up.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting too easy for Char.
And I think that is a perfect segue talking more about the concept of antagonistic design that we brought up at the beginning of this cast. So, for the people listening to us, can you describe what antagonistic design is? It's getting very late and my tongue is already starting to get tied, but I'll let the two of you get into it.
Well, so you kind of described already how, so if you think about the Sparrow is on one side and the Sparrow has the tiles and the wild tiles to work with to battle against the opponents and the bosses and eventually the storyteller. Martin is the Sparrow. And his job is taking care of all of the Sparrow's domain. And I am the storyteller. I take care of all of the things in the storyteller's domain. So I design the enemies and their attacks and how they're going to work and how they are structured inside of the level, so that I'm basically creating the space that Martin has to fight back against.
And it also started out on that first design session where we just wanted to, we were talking about what the game will be, and then we're like, okay, now we have to make like 50 cards to get a playable prototype. So we split the work. Yeah. So Char just started to doodle. No, the doodling was actually mostly me.
You did the doodling.
I did the doodling. You did the naming. Char started to make the enemies, and I started to make the Sparrow's abilities. And then we just kept that basically.
And it works really nicely because then whenever I would make a new level and then kind of send it to Mar, he gets now the ideas. He's like, oh, I'm going to need such and such to combat that. And then he'll create a new card and I'll be like, oh, nice that you think that that's going to be something that'll help you against the Falconer. But what if the Falconer was going to do 12 fire damage on a second turn? Now, then what would you do?
What if the Falconer removes his own fire?
Exactly, that was the real moment. What if the Falconer at his fifth turn removes all buffs that are on him? Then you're really screwed.
So it sounds a little bit more antagonistic. Of course, when I'm designing the tiles that you have to work with, I'm trying to at the same time give you interesting ways to face the challenges and to dodge the bullets that are flying towards you, while at the same time I'm of course trying to make it so that it feels thrilling and dangerous, and you are actually not just like I have full access to the source code. I could just destroy the challenge. But the challenge has to be there. So a part of me is also trying to design it so that I make sure that it still hurts a little bit what is happening basically. Because otherwise where's the fun? Like that's how you play video games. So it's not full on antagonistic. It is at the same time a collaboration, of course. Yeah. But it's interesting how you, by just working in this like joyful competition, you can create more than just two designers that pull in the same direction always. There's there's really a multiplier in that.
But I think it really comes from the way that, like, you know, we play all those old card games together, and we play like this. We made
meaning against each other, against each
other, but kind of together. And then we played Slay the Spire as a kind of we turned that into a kind of a
competition
between the two of us every day. And like now we've kind of turned making our own game into a game that we're playing with each other in that way. So I think that's like, if you make the process itself a game, then you're always winning.
And one thing that's, I think, very like interesting from a design standpoint is you're talking about coming up with ways to like counter what the other person is doing. That's a very interesting point when it comes to a lot of deck builders. Like, go back to Slay the Spire, for instance. for people who play it, obviously we all know that the game can be very spiky in terms of mechanics, especially the first game. You take the wrong build or the wrong boss, you're getting smacked down almost immediately, and there's not much you can do about it. And there's always that kind of like give and take in terms of these mechanics. How much do you want this specific build to be viable? I mean, and we've seen this in like every single deck builder out there. And to go back to a point the two you were talking about earlier, like, if something is just so damn good that it works every single time, it gets boring. And there's always that kind of like give and take, because on the other hand, if you just nerf that, or you just say, well, now the boss is completely immune to fire, get good. A lot of people can view that as, well, if you keep ruining all my favorite strategies, why should I keep playing? But then, of course, the other side is, well, my favorite strategy wins every single time. I'm bored. You're going to stop playing on that respect. So, like, and from that perspective, like, I guess, like, how do you kind of, like, balance the balancing in that respect?
So I have a lot of thoughts about that. One of them is, we have, how many cards do we have in the game now?
Over 200.
Yeah,
I guess
we have
about
over 200
at this point.
Yeah, it's like you never have all of them, of course, because like about half of them are distributed over the 3 ways, or 2/3 are distributed over the 3 ways that we have already implemented. But that is a lot. You don't get access to all of them immediately. They're distributed over levels, they're distributed over probabilities. Some of them are boss cards, and that means that you only get a limited number of them because there's only one boss per level and so on. So it's not a complete random pile of cards that you get to pick from. But there is a lot of content, and that means it takes people a long while to learn the game. In the moment, we are also not really drip feeding the cards at the beginning, which is something we will do when the game gets into a later stage, because it's going to be necessary. But it's just so people take a while to learn enough to even survive, and then they take even longer to get really good at it. So we see that we can provide many, many hours of learning to play the game where where we don't need to go very hard on the player, and they still are facing a challenge that is quite substantial for them. So that's one thing. Another thing is, I'm a very weird player. I play very few games. I played them for many years, and I try to get really good at them. So I played like Dark Souls 1 for, I don't know, 10 years or something. Every year, at least one playthrough. I was so, I wasn't the world's best player, but I played it in a way where I had like New Game Plus ×7 or something with one character, where I would just make it a thing where on a weekend I would play through Dark Souls 1 with that character. The character was really strong, had the perfect equipment, hadn't changed in like 3-4 playthroughs. I had all the souls just in my backpack. I did upgrade now and then, but it's so rare when you're up there that like one playthrough is like 2 times upping a little counter. So it would take me like, I think 20 hours or so it's a bit more than a weekend, but 18 or 20 hours or so to play through the whole game at that point. And that was nice, and that's how I play. And now I had an obsession, but my first console was a Nintendo Game Boy, the original thing, like the big chonker. And I played with that for many years, and I only played Mario Tennis. Because in Mario Tennis, it was a deterministic tennis game. So if I did the right thumb movements, I could play perfect aces and perfect returns 2 serves. So I would win 6-0, 6-0, and be done. That was a 20-minute exercise. And that is how I like to play. So my challenge was not surviving. I was furious if I lost 1 point. Like really, I hated it to lose 1 single point. So my challenge was a very different one. And we are kind of a little bit like, this is of course super egoistic to make a game according to your own preferences, but I am trying to make a game here that is not that hard to win. In progression mode, it is sometimes very hard to win. Like I fail sometimes, it is still hard. But in the daily run, it's about how many points you can squeeze out of the system, and not so much about survival, because I think people also just sometimes enjoy winning a game, like quite often actually. And a lot of card games that we are playing, like we're playing a game called Strohmandeln quite often, which is an Austrian tarot game. So tarot is the card game that tarot cards come from. Before they were divination cards, they were actually normal playing cards. And those games are called tarot. I don't know who got the spelling wrong at some point. And that game is all about, you look at your quite chunky hands.
Quite sizable
it's like
hand,
11
Can barely
cards,
hold
I think.
cards.
You look at them and then you have to say, basically, can you win this game? And bridge is also the same. You even go up in bridge. How good am I going to win this game? And I wanted to have a little bit this mechanic of, okay, it's not only about can you win in Sparrow Warfare, it's also about how good can you win?
And our I keep calling them playtesters. They're not playtesters anymore since we have a demo now, not a playtest. But our players are all of those people.
Yeah.
They are all super min-maxers to the max.
Well, I mean, that is of course, we don't know as much about the non-daily run players, the progression mode players. 60% of our plays are in progression mode, so it is still the bigger discipline.
But the Discord is full of the daily run players.
So I to summarize, it's like I think we didn't want to make this kind of ruthless challenge of Slay the Spire and Monster Train and all of these other deck builders. We wanted to make something that is a little bit more baroque, basically, so you can go in there, you can have fun, and the numbers go crazy, a bit like Balatro, but also not like Balatro, because Balatro also has if you don't get the right jokers very early on, you're doomed. So just you're never doomed. You always can find a way, and you just go crazy with the cards and blah blah blah. I wanted to do that, but if you know what you're doing, you can just squeeze more out of the system. Yeah, that's more our vibe. Baroque game.
This cast was another super long one, and we went a total of 2 hours, and that means we're splitting this into a 2-parter. We'll be back in a few days with the conclusion of this interview with Charlene and Martin. We'll be discussing more about Sparrow Warfare's design. So as always, do the YouTubing stuff, check out the Discord, Patreon. Be sure to get in touch if you'd like to come on for an interview if you are a game developer. And you'll find links to Sparrow Warfare and the rest of their press-related stuff down below. With that, enjoy the rest of your day and come back for the discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where you the art and science of games.